Hello, and this is Andy again doing a video, and this is episode 3 of the short series I'm doing on one of my favourite genres, and that is post-rock. So what I've been doing on this is taking a band for each episode, really sort of using them to highlight my discovery of this genre over the last 20 odd years. I started off with probably the two most famous, but they're the ones I got into first. Sigur Rós from Iceland, and then the episode 2 was Mogwai from Scotland. So we're sort of, we're travelling around the world a bit on this one, because now we go right across the other side of the world to Japan and the band Mono. And Mono is a band I discovered I really like, got quite a lot of stuff in various formats. So just going to sort of pick up with that. So typically on this, what I've tried to do is not necessarily highlight their whole discography, because we'd be here all day. Most of these bands have been around for a while now. But to pick the sort of album which I first got into, and then highlight one or two others, and a little bit about the band and their style. But just to kick off, as I've said in the other ones, what is post-rock? Because there is no absolute sort of agreed definition of it. What I see on Wikipedia doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think it's a bit of bollocks, to be honest. As I said in one of the earlier ones, one of the best descriptions I saw was a headline of an article years and years ago, talking about post-rock and the various things, and they called it Crescendo Central. And therein lies sort of a description which gels with me, in the sense that quite a lot of it has sort of like quiet moments building up to really intense crescendo, like often in the middle, but somewhere along there, and sometimes going out quietly. It's not all like that. It's quite variable, but there are some common themes, and one of the common themes is that typically, but not exclusively, it's instrumental, and that is certainly the case with Mono. I think they've only ever done one, I think on their last album. The bassist, whose name I can never remember, Tamaki. I'm not going to try and do their whole names because I will mispronounce them embarrassingly. Actually sang a song, but generally it is instrumental. Typically the songs or the tracks are quite long. Some of them are truly epic. And Mono certainly fall into that category, and they have the ups and downs and all the rest. The sort of loud noises, quiet patches. They are one of the other features that I think is fairly common, and that is really bonkers track titles. There's some really sort of silly ones out there, and funnily enough, Mono don't actually quite like. A lot of their track names are quite sweet and quite poetic, and I'll come to some of those when we go through. And I think their style is slightly different from some of the others. It's a bit, even though it's very guitar based. So essentially a twin guitar setup. So you've got, going by their first stroke nicknames here, Taka is the lead guitarist and the sort of leader of the band, and Yoda is a nominally rhythm guitarist, but I think he's as much a twin lead as anything. And Tamaki is a lady, and she's the bassist. And all of those, they like a bit of glockenspiel. So they all sort of, do a bit of glockenspiel as well. I think the drummer's changed a couple of times, so, but also has a little bash on the glockenspiel every now and then. The style of guitar is quite unique, really, and it's very much based around that, except when they bring the glockenspiel out, and it's difficult to describe, really, because it's quite fast. I don't know whether it's some quite fast strumming or plucking or a mixture of the two. I'm no guitarist, but it sounds great. And the two guitar, I mean, they're very they're really musicians, so they don't. They don't strut the stage. They both sit down. The guitarists are sat, Robert Fripp style, but really giving it, and they use that as much more of as a real musical instrument flowing through flowing through their songs. I sort of describe them as a bit orchestral sometimes, and that's probably the wrong word, though. They do like to play with an orchestra, and they like strings and things like that in the background. So a lot of the tracks that have strings in there. Some of their live albums, which I'll come to, are with full orchestra. But I think as well they're a little bit symphonic in a way. Less rock. They're not. This is not headbang stuff. It's a little bit, maybe a bit more cerebral than some of it. I describe, symphonic as in the sense, if they were classical, they'd be more Beethoven than Brahms. Let's put it that way. So let's get into. So the first album I got into of theirs is called Are You There, which was released in 2006, which is roughly around when I got into them, fairly soon afterwards. Initially, I got most of their stuff on as MP3 downloads from a sort of site I was subscribing to back in the day. I've since bought some on vinyl, but I've also upgraded some of my MP3s to FLAC, so they were doing a sale recently. I've got a few. I've got some on CD as well, so it's a whole mix of stuff. Let's come back to Are You There, though. This, if you look at lists, post-rock lists of best albums, this one typically is up there, in the top area. So it's considered to be a bit of a classic of post rock. Typically, as well, the band don't like the term post rock. They don't like to be tagged with any genre, to be honest. And they're not the most out and out post rock out there, but that's the nearest category. And to me, they are in that broad church of post rock. So you've got 4 sides. There's 6 tracks on here across 4 sides, so they're quite long tracks. I think this album I describe as probably their most complete album, but doesn't necessarily have the standout tracks that some of the other albums do. So it's an album which really works front to back, and rewards you listening to it all the way through rather than cherry picking tracks from it. Great album, classic post rock. So the next album I'm describing here actually a run of 3, a really good run of 3 albums, which to me are their best. I have the other studio albums and a couple of live ones either side. But these 3 I'm going to talk about now are their best ones, and this next one is absolutely, to me, is a superb album and is my favourite. I don't have it on vinyl. I haven't seen it at a sort of reasonable cost, and it's called Hymn to the Immortal Wind. This came out in 2009, I think, and it's got some great tracks on here, including what I think is probably their most standout track of all, and it's well worth listening to. There's some live ones on YouTube, and it's called Ashes in the Snow. That's the sort of the lead off, the opening track. You've got another one, the second one is great as well, called Burial at Sea. Another one a bit further on, Pure as Snow, bracket, Trails of the Winter Storm. So hence these aren't necessarily bonkers silly titles. They're quite poetic and quite sweet. This is a great album. I'd like to have it on vinyl sometime, but they're not. The getting their stuff in the UK isn't quite as easy, even though they are, a global band. They play, here, and I'll come to that in a bit. But they don't actually produce many albums in Europe, so they're imported. So it's often more costly, and and so on. The third, so not their third album, but the third of this little run I'm just going to highlight is called For My Parents, which I think was 2012. So they're sort of coming out every 3 years or so with the odd live album or EP or something in between. Another good one. I'd say out of these three, that's the weakest one. Another one with long tracks. There are only 5 tracks on here across all 4 sides of the double. So you can tell that 3 of the sides only have 1 track on. My maths suggests. Now, a live one. I picked this up. So they started out live in 1999, and in 2019, I wasn't actually aware of this. Would have been interesting to go and see it. They did a 20th anniversary concert live, and actually did it in London with a full orchestra. The Platinum Anniversary, you can't see that, I'm sorry. Let me pull this down a bit. It's a triple, this is, so it's hard to get in and out. Live in London with the Platinum Anniversary Orchestra. And the album itself was actually released in 2021. And it's a great album. I bought this on vinyl, and it was bloody expensive, to be honest. And in hindsight, I wish I'd bought the CD, because the pressing's crap. It's a bit frying eggs in places, which is disappointing, really. So it's a great album, though, and it sort of shows them pulling together their 20 years of producing great albums. They produced one in 2021. I have that on FLAC. It was one. They basically did a sale on Bandcamp last year, I think it was, and basically offering, except for these 3 classic ones, basically offering the chance to buy any of their albums at whatever price you wanted to on a digital basis. So I filled my boots, I upgraded my MP3s to FLACs, and picked out all the gaps that I didn't already have. So that's Mono, one of my favourite ones. If you don't know them, they're worth trying out. As I say, it's long form, epic, guitar based, but not heavy rock guitar based tracks, instrumental. They're a great band, and well worth checking out. So that's Mono. In my third of my bands, I'm going through 5 of them basically, and then we'll do a sort of a roundup of some of the earlier stuff. So now we move, we're continuing, we're going sort of east, west to east. So we started in Iceland, we've gone to the UK, Scotland, Japan, and now we move across to North America. The last 2 are from North America, and the first is from Canada. And it is, in my humble opinion, the most bonkers of these bands. And it is from Montreal, Godspeed You Black Emperor. And I'm looking forward to talking about that because I think they're one of the more interesting bands, and some of their albums, they're very, very, very different, and they're sort of, there's stuff you can talk around here a bit just beyond the tracks that they've got on the albums that they've got. So I hope that was okay, and look forward to talking to you about Godspeed You Black Emperor next time. Thanks for watching.